Hello, lovely Cancer. How are you doing? So welcome to the 2026 horoscope. So there is a lot going on this year. It's going to be probably just as interesting as 2025. I know a lot of Cancers always tell me, God, I'm having such a rough time and Jupiter's meant to be in my sign. I still don't feel any better. And I always say that astrology will give you a bit of influence, but it's not the whole story. You know, our mind and the way that we perceive the world, the way that we are projecting our own realities onto the world, and also different astrological placements will also, take effect as well. So be mindful. And also Jupiter in the first house will simply make it easier to go after opportunities. It's not necessarily a lottery ticket. But today I'm going to focus on the key themes, the most important 2026 transits, a reflection on 2025, also a ranking of the months based on what the topics are, and then a little bit of a conversation about the nodes changing as well. If you're interested in the best strategic aspects for your life based on love, travel, leisure pursuits, and then career, money, self-development, then I have a PDF that you can download. It is paid, but I've kept it pretty cheap, so it's around £10, sort of $13-14. It's not super expensive, but it is very long and very detailed. It also takes you through every single full and new moon, what it will mean for you, how it reflects on past moons in that particular cycle, and might help you with having the advantage over others when it comes to this is the best day to do this particular thing. So I do have a PhD in strategic advantage as well, so I handpick the aspects based on your zodiac sign. How is this going to be really good for Cancer? I also gear my horoscopes more towards a rising sign, so if you're a Cancer rising, then the houses will be accurate. But you can watch as a Cancer sun, especially if you're an older Cancer sun, because you might resonate with it more. But also if you want to watch for your ambitions and goals, and you can watch your moon sign for your mood and attitude and how you might be feeling throughout this year as well. And you can watch and couple it all together. You can have all big three package if you want. It's up to you basically. But I will talk about the key themes based on the rising sign, so just be mindful of that. Okay, so let's talk about the key themes for Cancer then 2026. So the main themes are a rumination on your career and the way you're expressing yourself to the world and friends, because Chiron has been in Aries for quite some time now, a few years, but it will be moving to Taurus. And when it moves into Taurus, it will be a little bit more of a difficulty with friendships. Chiron is the wounded healer, the asteroid of trauma, and it often highlights issues or kind of like traumatic experiences that we have been suffering with. This is much more of a difficulty in a natal chart, so have your natal chart pulled up because you might in fact have a Chiron in Taurus. But it really doesn't seem too drastic when it's a transit. It's more that you might just feel like, why do I keep lamenting on this particular thing? So you might be lamenting over friends, perhaps feeling a little bit isolated, or maybe having lost a very strong friendship in your life. You're thinking, what's going on here? You might also have sudden changes with friends and opportunities, and maybe in a bit of mood swing energy because Uranus is moving from Gemini to Taurus and then back again. So actually at the end of 2025, going into the start of the new year, Uranus will be in Taurus retrograding. And so then that will be the sudden changes with friends and opportunities. And Uranus doesn't discriminate. So this is never like a really good thing or a really bad thing. It depends on the aspects it's making and the house that it's in, right? So in the 11th house with friends and opportunities and whatnot, I don't think that's a bad thing by any means. It can be quite very interesting opportunities, a lot of social activity. But when it goes into Gemini, in which it will settle, you might find that there's some mood swing energy in the 12th house. There's some, I wouldn't say volatility, but I would say it just feels like you've got one foot in the ground, one foot off. So just be mindful that Uranus is going to be doing a lot of that energy. And Uranus is much better in Gemini than Taurus, because Gemini's and Uranus is an upper octave of Mercury, which rules Gemini. So it's not as good in Taurus. So even though the house placement for you is better, it's still not a very safe place for Uranus to be. And then, of course, the Jupiter changes will be affecting you too. So for the first half of the year, Jupiter still in Cancer, your first house of self-look with identity, goals, life, bringing general abundance. Again, it makes it easier for you to go after opportunities. It's not a lottery ticket. However, and this theory has been proven quite a few times with people in my life as well, that the last sort of week or so that Jupiter is in your sign is when you really get the gift. So you might find that you actually get all the luck as it goes into Leo. But Jupiter will be moving into Leo June the 30th, which is more abundance with finances, self-worth and stability in the second house as well. And this is probably, in a way, slightly better. It's funny because Jupiter in Cancer, you know, in your first house itself is very nice, but you have to remember where your placements are in the chart. Jupiter will blow up and expand what's near it. So if you've got Saturn in the first house, it's going to expand that, especially if it's in a very close orb degree, like 3-4 degrees, for example. Also, the first house is really our appearance and how we feel about ourselves and what we're projecting onto the world. So, for example, if that is being blown up and you have a very poor self-concept, that's going to be worse. Whereas Jupiter in the second house, it's quite nice because it expands finances. Again, this can also be in a negative if there's something debilitated there, because it can be loss of money as well, or a feeling of I need to have this material asset. This is why astrology is so nuanced and why it's so important that astrologers, including myself, talk about both the good and bad elements of Jupiter, because it's known as a benefic, meaning it's good, but it's actually quite malefic, meaning it's bad too. And then because of the nodes changing from Pisces to Aquarius and from Virgo to Leo, you'll be aligning with your internal transformation in the 8th house, making strides with intimacy and having just a better purpose with how you spend your money, feeling more stable. And in fact, with the South Node in Leo, you're actually releasing attachment to the material, feeling more confident and independent. So the nodes changing for you might be more important than anything else, actually. And then, of course, you'll be aligning your spiritual purpose, so speaking your truth and being authentic, and maybe even studying and taking on more projects or more like personal curriculums for recurring themes from 2025, because we'll also have eclipses in Pisces and Virgo this year again. So this is not new. And we'll also have eclipses in Aquarius and Leo. And I'll come to talk about the eclipses in this video because, like I said, all the full and new moons will be covered in my document, but I will talk about the eclipses in this video as well. So the most important 2026 transits for you, Cancer, other than what the eclipses I've just mentioned, is Uranus and Taurus in the 11th house and Gemini in the 12th house, Chiron in Aries in the 10th, and back into Taurus in the 11th house. Or into Taurus, I should say. North Node in Aquarius, 8th house. South Node in Leo in the 2nd house. Jupiter in Cancer in your 1st house of self, and Leo in the 2nd house as well. So those are the most important transits for you particularly. And then I'm just going to reflect on 2025, because some Cancers said, oh my God, this has been the worst year. Life just gets worse and worse. Others are like, I don't mind it. Again, depends on who you are. So we had a North Node in Pisces in the 9th house for you, and a South Node in Virgo in the 3rd house, and eclipses in both of these houses. Again, these are moving. We had Neptune in Aries station 30th of March in your 10th house of career. Saturn in Aries 30th of May 2025 in your 10th house of career. Again, you might notice you'll have some of that constriction again this year because Saturn will return in Aries. And, you know, also note if you're having if you have Saturn in Aries natal, it's your Saturn return. So just be mindful of that because it won't go back into Pisces. It will stay in Aries now. So Neptune and Saturn both in Aries are difficult. I don't think these planets that Aries particularly dwells in nicely, especially Saturn in Aries. It's like trying to put a lasso over a bull and it's like, oh my God, can't really challenge it. In the 10th house, you might find some constriction with your career, difficulty in gaining promotion or a better job, or maybe even just being seen. You might also find that you have some difficulty with older male figures in your life, especially fathers and uncles and whatnot, maybe even a brother. Jupiter also moved into Cancer as well, June the 9th, so that was in your 1st house of self, although it had to contend with quite a few difficulties in which it was squaring Saturn, and I did a couple of videos about how that affected the world, including Israel-Iran situation, but that will have maybe dampened the feeling of, oh, everything's amazing and the clock strikes midnight and I'm so lucky and the living is easy and good. It was actually a bit difficult. Uranus in Gemini from Taurus, July the 7th, 2025. And of course, you know, in Gemini as well, which is the 12th house. It's more difficult with a mental health, but from Taurus with the 11th is easier. This will sort of be reversed. We'll go in and out, as I mentioned, and then it will settle finally again in Gemini. So just be mindful that, you know, the house of the hidden as well might have some sudden effects, which means that secrets will be revealed as well. You might find out stuff you're not meant to find out, or that you didn't think you were going to find out, and it's like, could have done without knowing that, you know, but also it's pretty good for your internal transformation as well. And I'm just going to go through the most important moons for you, Cancer, before I start with the eclipses. So full moon in Cancer, your first house of self, January the 3rd at 13 degrees. New moon in Capricorn in your 7th house of committed relationships, January the 18th, which is really great. This is pretty fantastic as well for that new start, because this is a very successful new moon as well. So especially if you've got placements Capricorn from 10 to sort of 19 degrees. February, we have Uranus direct in Taurus, February the 4th in your 11th house, as I mentioned. Saturn will enter Aries February the 14th in your 10th house, and also be conjunct Neptune Aries at 0 degrees in the 10th house, which is the ultimate creation degree. This is, we've not had this for, it's a bit speculated about when we last had this. Some people say it was, you know, 7000 BC, it might be earlier than that, we don't really know, but either way, this is very, very, very rare in the 10th house, ultimate creation degree, for getting very serious about your job and the way you're coming across. Honestly, to me, with Neptune as well, this is like if you wanted to be famous or really well known, my god, I go for it. You know, it's feeding the delusion, but also giving you the commitment and drive with Saturn in Aries to do so, and that feels pretty strong and quite amazing too. In March, we also have Jupiter going direct in Cancer after retrograding March the 11th, again in first house of self as well. So that would be quite notable. In April, we have Mars conjunct Saturn in Aries, April 19th in your 10th house of career. Really good opportunity for your career. Again, if you want to have really it broken down for you, then in my PDF document and my website, that will do that for you as well. And May, Pluto retrograde in Aquarius in the 8th house. I don't think it would affect you too much, to be honest. Retrogrades, we're going to have this for like the next 20 years, so I'm like, I don't really think it's going to be the most major thing, but maybe it's something to mention. In June, we have Mercury entering Cancer, June the 1st in the first house of self, and another beautiful Venus-Jupiter conjunction. This is really lucky again. Venus conjunct Jupiter in Cancer, June the 9th in the first house of self. Use this energy. Use it, because you won't have this again because of Jupiter moving into Leo. So use this energy. You know, I made a video about saying that Taylor Swift got engaged on this particular day with her Capricorn rising. Wink, wink. I know she's got a Capricorn rising, even though she won't. Everyone says she's Scorpio rising. Like, no, no, no. And if you know, Chris Brennan, the amazing astrologer Chris, has already talked about this as well, and kind of, I won't say cooperated my theory, but kind of said yes, maybe as well. So I'm not the only one. And this is a fantastic time to manifest. It's just generally harmonious and beautiful. So if you want to have an opportunity, use this energy, because Venus will enter Leo a couple of days afterwards as well. Chiron entering Taurus in your 11th house, June the 19th. Be mindful of that happening. And then we also have a Mercury retrograde in your sign, actually, which is quite important. So Mercury retrograding in Cancer, June the 29th, the day before Jupiter enters Leo, in your first house of self. Funny enough, we have a full moon in Capricorn, 7th house of committed relationships, June 29th, on the same day as the Mercury retrograde. So Mercury in Cancer is already very nostalgic and quite sentimental, quite poetical, and a bit sort of, you know. So when it's retrograding, you might feel even more sentimental. And then with the full moon in Capricorn, 7th house, this might be really longing for an ex, really longing for an ideal in your mind, feeling like, oh my God. And then when Jupiter enters Leo in your 2nd house, you will really have an expansion of your self-worth and self-esteem and feeling much better about yourself. But that Mercury retrograde, it's important to note as well. In July, we have new moon in Cancer, first house of self, July 14th as well, which will be nice for you, just especially for identity and goals. I know I'm being quite vague here because I don't want to talk about it too much in detail, because like I said, my PDF will do that, and I also don't want to be on here for 2 hours at a time because I have to do like 12 of these videos, so I have a full-time job. So Mercury will be direct in Cancer July 23rd in the first house of self, so Mercury direct is going to be a lot easier. So that retrograde, I wouldn't say it's like it's about a month long, so it might be a little bit difficult for you because you're like, God, this is going on for ages. But I still think Jupiter entering Leo in the second house will give you a boost of feelings of self-worth and kind of feeling your oats, which is good. And like I said, Jupiter in your first house and second is good either way. Chiron will then retrograde in Taurus in your 11th house, August the 3rd. So you would think a little bit more about the trauma of the 11th house with friends and the way you're kind of like working and collaborating with others, but you're not necessarily doing anything to heal it. You're just sort of like journaling, for example. Mars enters Cancer August 11th, first house. Freaking hate Mars in Cancer. It's its fall. That's not me just being nasty. Like, that's generally, astrologically, it's a bad place for it to be. It's crying and screaming at the same time. It's just really weak placement, and so you might find that you are incredibly angry during this time, but also very weepy too, and it just feels a bit like, why, you know, why indeed. September, Uranus retrograding in Gemini, September 10th in your 12th house. So again, as I just mentioned with Uranus, Chiron, sorry, in Taurus, it will be similar. You know, you're not necessarily doing anything, you're kind of just like lamenting on the changes as of late. And then Chiron retrograding in Taurus, September 18th in the 11th house. Okay. Okay, so the Venus-Mercury retrograde in October will also affect you in the 5th house of dating and creativity and children. I mention this because with the Venus with 5th house, you know, it's a love crossover. Venus retrograde in Scorpio. So Venus and Scorpio, which actually it's taking place September 10th in the 5th house, but retrograding October 3rd. So it's very obsessive, this. Obviously, Venus retrograde, you think a little bit more evaluating your relationships. So the 5th house, it's more like dating pursuits and whatnot. It could also be creativity as well, and your appearance, aesthetics and luxury. But it's important to note because it's crossing over with a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, October 24th in the 5th house too. Mercury in Scorpio is incredible detective energy. And this can be really like, oh, I feel like I'm being lied to. Honestly, you know, it's going to be different for everybody, but that springs to mind cheating or somebody lying or some kind of affair energy in the 5th house. And you know, when you have all that energy, Pluto will be direct in Aquarius a couple of days before as well in the 8th house of, you know, transformation and loss and kind of figuring things out. And of course, what does Scorpio rule? The 8th house. So you might find yourself being like really on the back foot, or there's some mystery and revealing coming out there. But I think I already mentioned that with Chiron in Taurus, it is already going to cause some issues with friendships. And then of course Uranus in Gemini is like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to find things out in that 12th house. So that kind of adds to the story a little bit. But Mercury will be direct in Scorpio November 13th in the 5th house, and then that will be easier then. And you also have a new moon in Scorpio November 9th in the 5th house for you too. So that might be a little bit easier as well. And of course, Venus will be direct in Scorpio December 4th in the 5th house. So that's going to be much more abundant for relationships. And so a little bit easier as well. And a couple of days later, you have a nice new moon in Sagittarius too. And then Jupiter will be retrograding in Leo, December 13th in the 2nd house. But you will have a full moon in your 1st house of self to kind of end the year, December 24th. Kind of a nice way to just release things as well. And then Mercury goes into your 7th house in Capricorn on Christmas Day, and you're able to communicate about love a lot easier as well. So those are kind of the quick rundown of the year based on the biggest retrograde cycles and things that I think are important. I'm going to rank the months based on the topics. So January is the best month for investments and savings, in my opinion. February is the best month for studying, traveling and spirituality. March is the best month for career and aligning with your purpose. April is the best month for career and self-expression. May is the best month for friendships and focusing on your own goals. June is the best month to deal with self-care and also release any toxicity with love. And again, to enjoy Jupiter's final gift as well. I swear to God, that's a fruit fly. Why am I getting a fruit fly in October? I hate these little bastards. Anyway, July, best month to consider your career and connections and whatnot. August is the best month to be productive and meet new people. September is the best month to be productive. And what I would say is sort of get a bit of everything done, you know, have hands in lots of different pots. October is the best month to reevaluate relationships and think about children. November is the best month to be sort of grateful, enjoying family time. Interesting, this correlates with Thanksgiving in America as well. And then December is the best month for career and to get along with co-workers or maybe have a new start as well. And just before I go on to the eclipses, I want to mention the change of the nodes. North node in Aquarius from Pisces, South node from Virgo to Leo, July 27th, 2026 to March 26th, 2028. So 2 years it's going to be here. North node in the 8th house and South node in the 2nd house. So I know quite a lot about nodes because I do a lot of research on nodes and soulmates and past life and whatnot. When you have a South node in Leo, so be mindful of this if you have this as a node or return, this is your placement, or even have a reverse node or return, so you have a North node in Leo and a South node in Aquarius. In a past life, you were most likely a king or a queen, or there was a lot of feeling of riches and luxury and the living's easy. North node in Aquarius is much more about the struggle. Not in a necessarily bad way, it's more, I want to be there to help others and be charitable. And I want to also see a utopian vision. In the 8th house for you, you're focused on aligning your morals and values with your internal transformation. So people who have the right values when it comes to intimacy, they understand you, they respect your body and your mind. People who have the right ideas when it comes to investments and savings, you don't want to invest and save money in a very narcissistic capitalistic way. You're like, I want to save money, but I don't want to do it by hurting other people. And the South node in the 2nd house is releasing attachment with money, especially drama. This could be like, having a lot of debt, for example, or having issues. And because Jupiter in Leo is going to be there, like I said, be careful about what the degrees are going to be here for you. It might expand that energy. And so you think even more about releasing that energy of, I know I should be really rich, but maybe I'm not, or I feel like I'm so fed up that I never get to have all the luxury, and I never get to be this and that, and I'm comparing myself so much, and also being very codependent on other people's money as well. That could be something you're releasing this year as well. Okay, so let's focus on the eclipses. So we have a solar eclipse in Aquarius, February the 17th, and this is taking place for you in the 8th house at 28 degrees. So this is the 3rd decan of Aquarius. This is a very judgmental moon, and in this 8th house, so just be mindful of not being too harsh on yourself, or feeling a little bit like you are, feeling very competitive. You can feel very competitive because of the 7 of Swords here. The 7 of Swords is a deceptive card. It's also a card that's very plotting, it's very sneaky. It really feels like you need to be very resourceful with your money, with investments and savings, and make sure that you're not putting yourself into debt. This is a new moon as well, so you might have a new financial plan that feels really good for you, but you definitely have to think on your feet here. You might have to move some money around or move some assets around in order for things to feel better for you. And again, you might also find that you are comparing yourself to other people, and that's kind of affecting your mood a little bit, your mental health. As you can see, aspect-wise, Jupiter in Cancer is trining the North Node in Pisces. So Jupiter in the 1st house and the North Node in the 9th house. So this is actually really aligning with a spiritual purpose again. So it feels like, Jupiter in Cancer, whereas exalted in your 1st house, brings an expansive quality. I'm glad I just had a heart palpitation there. It brings an expansive quality, but it's also really focused on emotional security that makes you feel good. You might feel like pissing all your money up the wall because of the North Node, but actually you know that you need to have a really good plan in place and to be resourceful. The Sun and Moon in Aquarius in the 8th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 11th house. So again, you're trying to break free of this urge to be like a Warren Buffett with your money, but you also might find that you need to have some flexibility with it as well. So again, what I was saying about the North Node in Aquarius, with that you are trying to make your money in a very honorable way, but then you're also comparing yourself to other people. This eclipse, this new moon, because it is so judgmental, you might just feel like you're just behind. And so it might push you to do things that are a bit too drastic, and you don't necessarily want to do that, especially because of that square to Uranus, which it could be like, I'm just going to go and do this. And of course, what does Taurus rule? 2nd house of income and finance. So just be mindful of that. And again, if you want more detail on this, the document, my PDF, is available, and I'll talk about what this will mean for you with the last eclipse that we had as well in Aquarius. Okay, so March the 3rd, lunar eclipse, full moon in Virgo. And this is taking place for you in the 3rd house. So this is the 2nd decan of Virgo, in 12 degrees, Stalker Central. And of course, with any full moon, it's opposite the sun. So this is associated with the 9 of Pentacles, which is pretty successful. This is quite positive. It's very open, actually, in the 3rd house. This is very much open communication. You could also be, celebrating a success here. This is less so dramatic and devastating and actually quite nice. It's a success that you feel like you might not have earned. So you could be in the 3rd house, particularly closing up a project, finishing a big essay or a thesis, for example, maybe even a book. You might also find that you've really worked so hard to finish this up and you're like, right, I've done this. I feel good about it. I feel very confident. But at the same time, I feel slightly empty at this, I feel a bit empty. So because of that, you just want to be grateful and pat yourself on the back every part of the way. So every small bit that you've done in your achievement with the 3rd house, with the way you communicate. So for example, you're particularly avoidant and you have a communication situation with somebody and then you're like, wow, I really did well with that. Be proud of that. It's great. You challenged your avoidant attachment. This is just an example. If you finish a thesis, a book, a project, a study program, this is amazing, right? Even if you just did really productive energy in your life and you might feel very suspicious of, okay, I'm quite successful or I'm doing quite well, it feels difficult for you. Jupiter in Cancer as well, obviously bringing some expansion to the 1st house of self there, and making you feel like maybe I'm getting the edge of the success here as well. Sun and Mercury in Pisces trining Jupiter in Cancer as well. So emotionally, it feels like I just need to be more compassionate with myself. And Jupiter in Cancer, of course, then sextiling the moon in Virgo in the 3rd house. The emotional nature of the 1st house with your goals and your identity, meshing quite well with the moon in the 3rd house of productivity as well. So it feels like you can really start to build on this solid foundation, but also be mindful of the success you've done, pat yourself on the back. Virgo is very particular and perfectionistic, so sometimes it doesn't sit there and say, I did a bloody good job there, sometimes it's like, it's not good enough, I need to be better. And with an eclipse as well, in which it's the full moon of releasing that, just say you've done a good job, move on to the next thing. But it's like, take some time to enjoy the roses as well. Okay, next one we have is August the 12th, which is a total solar eclipse new moon in Leo. And this is taking place in the 2nd house for you at 20 degrees, putting it in the 3rd decan of Leo. If you can see aspect-wise, we've got 2 kite formations, but we have a grand air trine. So Pluto trining, Pluto in Aquarius, trining Venus in Libra, trining Uranus in Gemini, and then back up again, so a grand air trine. But we also have another kite formation on its back. So you can see we have one on its side and another. So kite formation is generally very transformational in astrology, but when you have this and it's all like a trine, a grand trine area, it's just really, really logical, actually. It's really good for new innovation and things to really take place. Of course, the solar eclipse is a supercharged new moon. So this is like innovation. It's a new start. This would be, stripping an old team away and putting a new team in. Boom, we've got a really fast car. It's quite nice. And of course, in the 3rd decan, this is associated with the 7 of Wands, which is kind of very competitive. And in Leo, which is about drama, I'm the main character, I want to be competitive, you might find that you are under some competition or rivalry for your money. So this could be that you're trying to get a raise at work, or you are finding that you're a bit under attack. There's some defensive, aggressive argument that you're having with somebody over money. It could even be that you're trying to demand some respect for yourself and you're not necessarily getting it. It's making you very angry, and you're like, right, I'm going to stand on business. I'm going to have my principles. I'm going to be the leader here. And it's just very fiery and dramatic. You'll feel very confident here. People will not be taking advantage of you. You'll say, you know what, I'm going to speak my truth and you cannot take advantage of me. So you'll feel very supercharged. Mars in Cancer at 0 degrees as well, again in its fall, in which you might be like, right, I'm angry. I'm going to cry when I'm at home, when you don't see me, but it is quite angry. And then Mercury and Jupiter in Leo. Mercury in Leo takes everything very personally. think back to the Mercury retrograde in Leo 2025, awful, right? Takes everything personally because Leo rules the heart. Jupiter in Leo as well, expanding Mercury because it's within that degree or before degrees. So it's going to expand that energy. So there can be some arguments on this particular eclipse. And for you particularly, it could be about money, or it can be about your self-respect and your self-worth. And you're like, don't treat me like a doormat. You know, who do you think you're talking to? So it can be a little bit difficult. I would say this new moon is not a nice one. It is an eclipse, but it looks janky. Like I said, the air trine is nice for innovation, doing things differently, but it doesn't disregard the fact there's going to be arguments up the wazoo, right? Especially because of the decan it's in and because of the kite formation too. So just be mindful of that particularly as well. And then we have I'm switching from an iPad to computer and I'm touching it. And I'm like, this is not touchscreen. So August 28th, we have a partial lunar eclipse, full moon in Pisces, very emotional. If you think back to the lunar eclipse we had in Pisces last year, it was not particularly nice either. In August was not particularly nice, and I'm a Pisces moon and I hated that one. So you can see that the kite formation is not here anymore, and we don't have that grand trine. We do have like the top half of the kite formation, and Pluto will be trining Uranus for quite some time, so I'm not going to mention that too much. And Mars in Cancer still trining the moon, so motivation is not terrible here, and it's actually quite an artistic, lazy decan actually at 4 degrees. It's sort of like I'm just gonna sit at a cafe, have a cigarette, and not really focus too much on things. You might feel very disappointed or hurt though, because this is a decan associated with the 8 of Cups, so you might find that you're walking away from something you thought would work out. Obviously Pisces for you, Cancer, is in the 9th house. So this could be, thought you could be traveling and doing something expansive, maybe missing out on a study program, but also this could be not meshing or gelling with somebody in a spiritual manner and it just doesn't feel right for you. This can just feel isolating, like you don't necessarily get along right now in the world. It feels like you're an alien or an outsider. People aren't understanding you. 8 of Cups is quite literally walking away and withdrawing from, the rat race, or just withdrawing from life generally, and having more of a philosophical monk on the mountain vibe with the 9th house. The Buddhist who sits atop the hill and is alone and has to think. So this full moon, you're kind of releasing a lot of stored up energy that I think would actually be pertaining to reality. And what I mean by that is that Pisces is Neptunian, right? So it's very, to quote Robert Pattinson, delusion, it's delusion. And trains are so loud, I apologize. It is I don't want to keep making cuts, so I'm just like, we're all friends here, it's fine. And there's another one coming right now. It will feel like you're being a little bit delusional about things, but you have to release that energy of reality. It's going to be important for you. And so this is a very meaningful journey. The 8 of Cups is not superficial, and Pisces is not superficial, and the 9th house is certainly not superficial. This is philosophical, it's spiritual, and I think this journey is going to be quite impactful for you. Again, if we look at the aspects as well, Uranus is squaring Mercury and the Sun, and when Uranus is squaring Mercury, Mercury in Virgo, for you it particularly feels like these 2 Mercury ruled signs, I should say, Gemini and Virgo. It feels like a lot of messages can come to you through meditation and through spiritual retreat. And the Sun, which is more about your goals and ambitions, I think what you thought you wanted is not what you want now. And so everything just feels like, when you have a spiritual awakening, it really feels like a really large spiritual awakening for you, Cancer. And this is the reason why I think my dad's a Cancer rising. We don't know my dad's rising sign, he's an Aries, but I'm convinced he's a Cancer rising. And the more I do this, I'm like, yeah, I think he's a Cancer rising. Saturn also opposite Venus as well, causing some arguments and constrictions there with romance. But of course, Saturn in Aries and Venus in Libra, this is difficulty with family members and the home. We'll be having an argument about that with your career and what you're trying to do. And it just feels like you want maybe some home comforts. Another palpitation, but I'm going to die on camera. It just feels like home comforts with, why am I doing this as well? And you'll also notice for this eclipse, the North Node has moved into Aquarius and the South Node now in Leo too. So that spiritual purpose with the 8th house becomes even more important now as well. So I think that's the last eclipse that I'm going to talk about. So for you, Cancer, again, I don't like saying years are good or bad for particular signs, because some people love chaos and some people hate it, and it depends what kind of person you are and your other placements as well. I mean, if you have the look of being a bloody triple Cancer, then good for you, you know, you might be like, okay, you know. But I think the look with Jupiter and Cancer being your first house for the first half of the year is good, and then even in Leo with the second house is good for abundance. But I also think with the North Node in Aquarius, you will be aligning with your internal transformation, and that's going to be there for the next 2 years. So this is not just specific to next year. I was going to say to tomorrow, to next year, but it does feel more spiritual, more focused on who you want in your life, and try not to isolate yourself. And again, I feel that you have some of the better placements out of other zodiac signs for this year. So I generally don't feel bad about this, and I think it's pretty nice actually, Cancer. So, and as always, life is what you make it. So, you know, it's 50-50. We are projecting our reality to the world, but also astrology gives us a bit of opportunity and abundance. And again, if you'd like to know more about those opportunities and you want to have the advantage for love, for career, then you can download my PDF or get a reading with me or whatever you want. It's up to you. I don't mind. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hope you have a fantastic 2026, Cancer. I truly do. And let me know in the comments what you're looking forward to, what your year's been like, anything that you would like to achieve next year as well. And if you liked the video, give it a like, and I will see you soon. Bye.